Thanks very much. I'd like to take my time this morning to discuss something that's going on with the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which is a fund that was appropriated by Congress, obligated, and the funds disbursed to a private fiscal agent, Citibank. But because it relates to climate, and because the president insists falsely that climate change is a hoax, people who are subordinate to him feel obliged to go after this greenhouse gas reduction fund. The problem is that the manner in which they have gone after it reflects the actual weaponization of the Department of Justice in ways that the prosecutions of President Trump never saw. So it begins with the interim United States attorney saying publicly, before he's even in office, that this fund is total graft and needs to be stopped. So he's already announced his predilections about that. This fund includes nefarious actors like Habitat for Humanity. The veto clock had run, so there was no role to undo the funding. It was even disbursed, as I mentioned. So what they had to do was to try to cook up a way to freeze the fund. And the way they tried to cook up to freeze the fund was to create a pretend criminal investigation. And then they could point to the criminal investigation and tell Citibank to freeze the funds pending the criminal investigation. The problem was there's no evidence of any crime. And that became apparent when the ask went from interim U.S. Attorney Martin to the chief of the criminal division in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia, and was told by the chief, there's no crime here, I cannot do that. Rather than stop, what he did was force the resignation, fired the career criminal chief. This is a guy who's never been a prosecutor before, and he's firing his criminal chief. So that's a pretty big red flag when you get an answer from the career staff saying, boss, there's no crime here, and then you fire them for telling you that. Then he tried to shop this notion around the office, and no career U.S. attorney would sign. I've been a U.S. attorney. It's almost unfathomable for a U.S. attorney's office to send out a pleading without a career attorney being involved. So he couldn't get a career attorney. Another big red flag. So then he went forward himself. Again, this is not an experienced prosecutor. This is not somebody who brings a lot of game with him. He just wanted to do it. So with no support from the career people in the office, he went forward alone. The alone bid is another very strong signal that something is very badly amiss in what's going on. So then, going ahead solo, as the interim U.S. attorney, he went before a magistrate judge who said, no dice, you got nothing here, and he shot him down. For a U.S. attorney's office to be shot down over a warrant application is like a hospital never event. If that ever happened in Rhode Island when I was the U.S. attorney, there would be after-action investigations, reports, what the hell went on here? Because you never want to put your federal judges in a position where they have to shoot down a warrant application of yours. You want to make sure that they are ironclad. So this failure by the U.S. attorney to get the magistrate judge to go along with him, that's yet another red flag flying. And then after that, they started shopping it around other U.S. attorneys' offices. That's also pretty much unheard of. What resulted was something I've never seen before, which is a letter out of the FBI recommending a temporary freeze. I don't know any procedure for doing that. It had no sign-off from anybody in any U.S. attorney's office. Again, it's just bizarre incident after bizarre incident after bizarre incident after bizarre incident. And in the backdrop to this are out-of-court statements made by Lee Zeldin, our EPA guy, and Ed Martin, this interim U.S. attorney, derogatory about the bank and the recipients of the program. It started with graft, but they went on to make allegations of fraud and criminality. Well, there are a number of things that are wrong with that. First is, allegations of fraud and criminality are defamatory per se. It's not the kind of stuff anybody should be saying about anybody else falsely. It's particularly bad when it's the prosecutive branch that is saying things falsely about people that they're either seeking to investigate or are investigating or are prosecuting. The U.S. Attorney's Manual, now called the Justice Manual, is rife with warnings not only to the Department of Justice employees, but to the agencies working together on investigations, that you don't say derogatory things about people while you're investigating them. You let your pleadings do the talking. That is Federal Prosecution 101. So all of these false statements that are being made, they had the chance to try to prove their false statements, by the way, and a federal judge took a look at the best they could do and said there is no evidence here of any criminality, period. So you have the magistrate judge who shot down the warrant, and you've got the federal judge who shot down the argument that there was fraud or criminality here. And yet they persist. So the aberration here from proper prosecutive process is really telling. And both in this committee and in the Judiciary Committee, I'm going to keep digging at this, because over and over and over again, there are multiple red flags flying of prosecutorial misconduct, of legal violations, and ultimately probably we'll find out from civil litigation, either under 42 U.S. Code Section 1983 or in a straight defamation case, what the heck went on. But I can tell you, Madam Chair, as somebody who's had to sit in that seat as a U.S. attorney, everything about this stinks to high heaven, and we need to get to the bottom of it. Thanks for letting me take the time to discuss this when we have the witnesses here today, and we have my beloved friend, Senator Barrasso, and Governor Gordon here.